be okay to now officially start the webinar. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon for the participants joining from Pakistan. Welcome to the first webinar of the webinar series on climate and disaster risk finance and insurance, or CDRFI. I am Ujabi Baidar, and I'm working as a researcher at the United Nations University Climate Risk Analytics team of the MCII division. I support the team in the implementation of economics of climate adaptation framework in developing countries, climate and disaster risk financing projects, to name a few. We are very pleased to kick off this series of webinar on CDRFI, and a very warm welcome to all. I'm delighted to introduce our guest speakers for today's session, each bringing valuable insights and experience in the field of CDRFI. Our first speaker is Sarita Gabriela Katvaroa. She's the project associate at the UNU. She will kick off today's session by exploring the concept of CDRFI, foundational principles, and different CDRFI instruments. Next, we have Linda Duroy, and she will be sharing her expert experiences from country-level insurance and how it aligns with broader climate adaptation practices. And we also have with us Mariam Parekelashvili from UNU. Mariam will walk us through the gender and pro-poor principles and different gender aims to provide financial protection for climate and disaster risks. To begin, I would like to briefly set the stage for why this webinar series is being held and why is it important in the context of climate and disaster risk financing. As we know, climate-induced disasters are becoming more intense and frequent, putting increased pressure on communities and economies and public systems. In this context, CDRFI plays a critical role. These tools provide timely and reliable financial support for emergency response and recovery, helping stabilize economies and protect public budgets when disasters strike. But beyond this crisis response, CDRFI also strengthen risk management and foster collaboration between public and private sectors, offering much needed financial protection for vulnerable population and countries' investments. And the goal of this CDRFI webinar series is twofold. First, to enhance the understanding and capacity among participants to design and implement CDRFI programs by closing knowledge gaps. And also the second is to build a shared knowledge base that allows for more effective discussions on real-world application and policy integrations. This webinar series is therefore organized to understand more on different disaster and financing options available, and is organized in collaboration with GIZ Pakistan and forms part of the broader project Improving Climate Governance in Pakistan, comprehensive risk assessment and development of sectoral guideline project. With that context in mind, let's now take a look at this, how CDRFI connects to national planning, national adaptation planning, and where these tools can play a strategic role. This diagram here illustrates the various CDRFI entry points for integrating CDRFI into NAP processes. It shows how CDRFI can be strategically integrated across different stages for national adaptation process, from planning and implementation and all the way to monitoring and evaluation. At the center here, we see the core enabling factors for adaptation, which is financing, institutional arrangements, capacity development, and information sharing. The diagram here highlights key action where CDRFI can support and strengthen each phase of the NAP processes from planning to implementation and monitoring. For example, CDRFI contributes by identifying financial tools that support adaptation actions, building institutions and technical capacities to highlight some of the few points. In short, the visual shows us how CDRFI is not just about post-disaster response. It is also a strategic enabler for long-term climate resilience through informed planning and financing mechanisms embedded into national processes. So I think, sorry for the short interruption. Yeah. Here, also, I would like to present different entry points from identifying the risk financing tools as a part of adaptation planning to using disaster risk analytics to inform decisions and incorporating CDRFI into national financing strategies. Here is the diagram presents multiple options where CDRFI can be an entry point for a broader NAP implementation process. I would not go much details into here. My colleague and the panelists will explain more in detail in their presentations later on as well. Moving on, with that, let's look at how we have structured these webinars into to cover some of these topics. We have structured this webinar into 3 webinar series, and today is the first webinar of the series. Today's focus will be to introduce the concepts, foundations, and key principles of CDRFI. Also, we will take a deep dive into different instruments, also gender-sensitive aspects when thinking about CDRFI. The subsequent series in coming months will focus on policies and practices, the entry point for civil society and development and implementation of CDRFI, evidence-based benefits and challenges in the implementation of climate risk insurance programs. So these are basically different aspects and conceptual understanding that the government or institutions consider while structuring their national programs in relation to disaster risk financing. That is basically the outcome of the series. We have structured this webinar into 3 different sessions, and we will be joined by a range of expert guest speakers from different sectors over the 3 webinar series, and present their insights and experiences in this important area. Each session is scheduled to run for about 120 minutes. Therefore, we encourage you to stay engaged throughout the presentation. You can post your questions anytime in the chat. We will try to address some of them during the session, and we will also reserve a time at the end for a dedicated Q&A discussion. Participants who complete at least 2 out of 3 webinars will be eligible for a certificate of participation issued by MCII. For this, we also request that you fill out the survey at the end of the session, and if you miss a session, you can still meet the completion criteria by filling out a survey or a quiz related to the missed webinar. In addition to the webinar, I would also like to take a moment to highlight additional learning platform for those of you who are interested in understanding more in depth on CDRFI, the UNU has developed a comprehensive self-paced e-learning course on CDRFI. The course introduces key concepts and policy frameworks, and also explores how CDRFI works in practice. It also covers how it can be integrated into national policy and planning, and provides insights into the role of civil society engagement and advocacy at different levels. While the webinar series will touch on some of these core concepts, we encourage you to explore full course to gain a more in-depth perspective on the subject. We will share the link with you in the chat, but there is also a QR code here if you want to quickly have a look, but feel free to check it out after the session as well. Just a moment on that. To set a stage for today's webinar, I would like to share a bit of a background on how this session fits into our broader effort in Pakistan. The webinar series is a part of ongoing project, as I mentioned before, which is improving climate governance in Pakistan, which is comprehensive climate risk assessment and development of sectoral guideline jointly implemented by UNU EHS and GIZ Pakistan. The project aims to strengthen climate governance by supporting risk-informed planning and adaptation through climate risk assessment and the development of provincial guideline, particularly in two provinces in the country, which is Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. As you can see here, the project covers a wide range of interconnected activities, which includes understanding climate risks related to flood and droughts, identifying different adaptation investment pathways and disaster risk financing options, integrating ECA framework alongside Climada to inform decision making, and developing sectoral climate risk guidelines to support adaptation investment and planning in the two provinces. These are essentially the different components of vulnerability assessment and sector-specific climate risk guidelines. But in addition to the risk assessment, the project also aims in transferring climate modeling knowledge through a trainer of training programs for Climada tool, building national and local capacity by establishing community of practice, which this webinar is the part of. The community of practice is also a space that brings together practitioners, researchers, policymakers, NGOs, and private sector actors working on climate resilience in Pakistan. Ultimately, these efforts contribute to the central goal, which is improving climate governance in Pakistan by making it more data-driven, inclusive, and action-oriented. A little more about what the community of practice and the Pakistan Climate Resilience Network is. I understand some of us already know about the Pakistan Climate Resilience Network. As I mentioned earlier, the objective is to bring together practitioners and researchers and stakeholders who is working on climate resilience across Pakistan, and foster a collaboration and knowledge exchange, by which the networks aim to amplify the impact of the members' work nationwide as well. The network focuses on three main areas. First is facilitating lasting connections among different climate experts, policymakers, academics, NGOs, and private sectors to encourage a collaboration. Second, sharing knowledge and innovation to promote practical and scalable solutions for climate resilience. And third, highlighting progress, including new projects, research, and events that are shaping the resilience landscape in Pakistan. Being part of the community of practice brings together a number of valuable benefits designed to support your work and professional growth. It is a space for networking and collaboration, and you will also be able to connect with professionals from various disciplines and sectors working in climate resilience in the country. It's also a platform for sharing updates on relevant projects, workshops, conferences, and different research. Second, we also strongly focus on knowledge sharing and learning. This includes structured webinar series like the one we are in today, led by both national or international experts. We also offer tailored program and access to different courses that support continuous learning. And there are also resources for professional development, such as regular newsletter, updates on events and training opportunities, as well as exclusive access to different trainings, materials, recorded session, and expert insights. Altogether, the community of practice on the Pakistan Climate Resilience Network is a space designed to inform, connect, and empower everyone working towards climate resilience in Pakistan and beyond as well. So how to get connected? For that, we have some engagement channel to support continuous learning and collaboration. First, we have a dedicated LinkedIn page for professional and accessible space for networking, where you can have a discussion and share your work and research. Members can post project updates, share training materials, and engage with content from broader GIZ and UNU collaboration. We also have different newsletters and webinar series like the one you are attending today. So this channel support in having a collaboration within the resilience space for all the members who are in Pakistan and beyond. So before we move into the session, I would like to have a quick Mentimeter session to understand the audience a bit more. You can join using the instructions shown in the screen. Maybe you can quickly scan it. Okay. Is everybody able to join? I can see some thumbs up. So we have 16 people who have joined. 17. Can you see the Mentimeter slide that I'm opening at the moment?
We still see the QR code.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
So first, I would like to know where are we all joining from. So maybe you can pin the location to from where you are joining. I could see most of us are from Asia and mostly from Pakistan. We have also some audience joining us from other part from Africa, from South America. Okay, but I could see most of us are from Pakistan, I understand. Yeah, maybe I could move to news next slide. We have over 30 responses, 26, 27. I would like to have a short, I have a short question to understand how many of us are familiar with CDRFI. So we have some participants who are quite familiar, while some are not familiar at all. Okay, so I think most of us have some background in what CDRFI is and the concept of disaster risk financing, and also could be on insurance. Um, so I have another question, which is when you hear about CDRFI, what would you think about? What's the first thing that would come in your mind? Or could be agriculture, could be insurance, could be disaster financing. So you can just type a word that comes into your mind when you hear about CDRFI. Microinsurance or insurance, social protection. Okay. Securing communities, asset protection, climate change, glacier. It's interesting. Okay. Yes, I think overall CDRFI is covering a wide range of topics from hazard and risk financing to protecting communities and long-term resilience. So I could see most of us are very familiar with different topics. Yeah, so thank you so much everyone for participating. Now I would like to give the floor to to the main session, and we have our first guest speaker, Sarita. Are you let me know once you're ready and I can share my screen.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so the floor
Hello.
is yours. Um, can you see my screen?
Nice.
Okay. Yes. Please let me know when I have to change.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. My name is Sarita, and I'm a project associate at MCII, UNU EHS, and I work primarily on the climate risk and insurance in the Caribbean project. It's great to see that you all have, already some insights into climate and disaster risk financing, so it makes my job a bit easier. So today I will share some brief insights into CDRFI. We will discuss a bit about the instruments, the benefits, integration into DRM, as well as how these tools can be used for risk layering. So first, we would like to start with what is climate risk. And climate risk refers to the potential harm caused by extreme weather or changing climate conditions, such as flood, droughts, or heat waves. And these risks occur in the intersection of three factors. These are hazards, exposure, and vulnerability. So hazards are dangerous events like a flood or drought that can cause people, property, or the environment harm. The exposure, while exposure is the proximity of one's home or business to danger. For example, living in a coastal city exposes inhabitants to sea level rise and storms. So it increases the exposure to these disasters. While vulnerability looks at how likely it is for persons and systems in place to be affected by a hazard based on how prepared or protected they are. So, for example, living near a river in a poorly built home makes those persons more exposed and vulnerable to floods. So, a combination of these three increases the risk that persons would be affected by climate change and climate risk. You can move on, Rajabi. All right, so what is CDRFI? So CDRFI refers to financial instruments and strategies that aim to improve the financial preparedness and resilience of individuals and societies against climate and natural hazards. So these can include things like insurance, emergency funds, or credits that help individuals, communities, and governments deal with the financial impacts of disasters. So the goal is to make sure that when a disaster strikes, money is available quickly and in the right amount to support relief and recovery. And this is especially important in developing countries where disasters can reverse years of development. So in order to be more proactive, then these tools can help to limit the risks that are associated with impending disasters. Next. So as with everything, timing is everything when it comes to disaster response. Often funding for disasters arrive late, with funds being diverted from development projects to help recovery efforts. So this then exacerbates the effects of the disasters. In this diagram, it shows that with proper financial planning and tools such as insurance, it can facilitate quicker responses within days and not weeks or months, making them more shock responsive. All right, so now we look briefly at the principles of CDRFI. So firstly, we look at risk ownership, transparency, and accountability, where it is important for governments, organizations, and individuals to understand and also take ownership in managing the effects of the risk, which improves their ability to recover and allows them to rely less on external resources. So to empower and recipients and maximize synergies, it should be employed in a manner that promotes transparency and accountability so that persons can recover quicker and rely less on external aid. Timeliness of finance. So as mentioned previously, timing is everything, and the timeliness of funds plays a key role in managing risk. Therefore, mechanisms such as insurance can provide quick payouts, thereby improving the response to disasters and enabling quicker recovery and a reduction in loss. Cost effectiveness. So in order for CDRFI mechanisms to be useful, they must not only deliver tools that are applicable and make sense to the communities, but they must also be affordable. So they must also offer tools that can be afforded by by the target groups, as well as offer value for money by balancing premium costs and also ensuring that the groups can afford them. Inclusiveness and equity. So I will just briefly touch on this because this is something that my colleague will look at a bit more. But these solutions should also be accessible and beneficial to all, especially vulnerable groups such as smallholder farmers, women, and low-income households. In order for CDRFI to also be effective, it should be coherent with disaster risk management and climate policy. So CDRFI should not be a standalone instrument, but should complement and reinforce broader efforts in climate adaptation, disaster preparedness, and sustainable development, and monitoring and learning. So it's essential that when these instruments are implemented, that there is a monitoring and learning system that's in place. So that mechanism should include clear reporting, monitoring, and opportunities to learn from these experiences so that they can be improved and scaled. So expanding instruments of financial protection for governments, communities, businesses, and households can therefore lower the impact of disasters, make vulnerable communities or economies more resilient, safeguard sustainable development, and protect livelihoods of poor and vulnerable persons. Next. So why financing and insurance? So as we know, extreme weather events are on the rise, especially in developing countries where they produce severe setbacks to development. Current responses are currently made on an ad hoc basis, and they divert funds away from development. So CRI can not only be used as a tool to enhance the availability of resources, but also their timely deployment can support countries in better planning for the risks, including preventative risk reduction and coordinated disaster response. So in order to be more shock responsive, financing and insurance can provide a more planned, predictable, and proactive approach, and help countries to build back better and stronger. So now we look at the types of CDRFI instruments. So I've just broken them down into three categories, broad categories. And some of them are, so we look at market-based tools, which are things like parametric insurance, indemnity-based insurance, and catastrophe bonds. Budget-based, which are contingency funds, contingent credit lines, budget reallocations, and reserves. And social protection links, where climate risk insurance for vulnerable households through adaptive social protection by including it in the instruments that are already in place by the government. All right. So as the right mix of these tools depends on the type of risk, how often it happens, and how severe they are. So some of the benefits that can be derived from these tools are timeliness to access of funds for emergency response. As I mentioned before, a lot of these responses happen ex post. So a disaster happens and countries are now trying to figure out how do they respond. So if these funds can be accessed quickly, then the response mechanisms can be a lot more efficient and help those in need quicker. It also provides financial protections for governments and households. It provides incentives for reducing risks. So for example, if I have the funds to build back better, then it encourages me to prepare better for a disaster that may come in the future. So it encourages risk reduction investments, and for example, things like building safer homes or growing drought-resistant crops, for example. And it supports vulnerable groups who are often face the worst impacts. So if we have quick finance of quick funds available to those persons who are affected the most, then we can help them to recover quicker so that the cycle of poverty does not continue. And additionally, it allows for better coordination between disaster, finance, and planning departments, where these benefits can make communities and the economy more resilient. All right. So how can CDRFI be integrated into DRM strategies? So it can be integrated in, the disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation strategies on a country level. And while DRR and CCA focus on preventing and reducing disaster risk, CDRFI provides a financial safety net to manage residual risks that cannot be eliminated. So as I said before, it does not replace, but it complements those things that are already in place by government. So by combining these approaches, countries can create a more comprehensive and effective DRM framework that can improve their resilience. As Ujabi mentioned earlier, this integration can also be included in things like, the national adaptation plans and the NDCs to enhance resilience and provide financial protection. And well-integrated CDRFI should allow people to manage a risk more effectively, but it cannot replace holistic DRM planning. Okay, so now we look at some of the steps into integrating it and how it can be used. So first, we would like to identify the risks. So know what hazards exist and who is at risk. So it's important to actually know and gather data on those that are actually affected so that we can properly plan to assist those. Then we look at risk prevention and risk reduction as a starting point. So, there's things like preventing and reducing the probability of events and exposure and vulnerability. So, for example, implementing early warning systems, improving preparedness. So, pre-positioning emergency response equipment, evacuation plans, and contingency planning, and financing residual risk. So this is where things like insurance comes in. So where we use risk management tools or finance tools to either transfer, retain, or seek external financing to help us in the recovery efforts. And then resilient recovery, which is where we use the funds for, we improve construction policies, disaster resistant construction, build back better, and also assist those that are severely affected. So when used this way, CDRFI becomes a powerful part of national resilience strategy. Right. So I would like to touch briefly on the categories. So CDRFI can be grouped into these three broad categories based on how the risk is managed. So some of the risk transfer mechanisms that we see being employed globally are things like sovereign and regional insurance risk pools. So for example, on the project that I work on, we work directly with the Caribbean Catastrophe Risk Insurance Facility, CRIF SBC, and they are a sovereign risk pool that insures the governments. So if an extreme weather event were to happen, and a policy is triggered, then CRIF pays out the government in a very quick time frame, which allows for resilient recovery efforts to be implemented a lot quicker. Insurance for public assets, natural resource insurance, generally for the extractive industries, meso and microinsurance, TACAFL, and catastrophe bonds. When we look at risk retention tools, we look at things like government revenue and budget allocation, contingency and reserve funds. So contingency funds are, for known but uncertain risks, such as natural disasters, while reserve funds are typically established for broader purposes like stabilizing budgets and managing risks. We also look at extra budgetary funds not included in the annual budget, budget reallocation and realignment, and taxation. And for external risk finance, we look at tools such as contingent credits, CAD DDOs, which are catastrophe deferred drawdown options, which is a type of contingent financing offered by the World Bank that provides immediate access to funds for countries facing natural disasters or health crises. And it allows countries to respond quickly to emergencies while other funding sources are mobilized. So in the event that you don't have insurance at a sovereign level. Disaster risk finance facilities also fall under this category. Bonds, humanitarian systems, forecast-based financing, and private sector responses. Next, all right. So now we look at CDRFI as a risk layering tool. So using the Pakistan context, disasters range from small-scale events like seasonal flooding, to massive events such as those that happened in 2022. So essentially, risk layering in these settings means using different financial tools for different layers of risk. So for example, for small but frequent disasters like local flooding, we can use budget reserves or contingency funds. For medium level risks, such as those that are low frequency with moderate to high severity, this is where things like insurance would be, or credit lines would be more applicable. And these would be used for systems such as droughts that happen every few years. Again, data would be paramount in this and deciding what is necessary and what is useful. But these are just some examples of things that can be implemented in specific settings. For rare and extreme events, like a once-in-a-century flood, we may need international aid or large-scale insurance, such as those provided by sovereign risk pools. And this layered approach helps the government plan better and ensure that resources are available at the right time and for the right type of disaster. So essentially, by using these different tools, it touches on different areas of the population and also allows for better planning and also reduces the burden that the government face when, everyone is affected and everyone is requiring assistance. Next. Okay, so here I have a snapshot of the loss, the damage, loss, and needs per sector on the Pakistan flood. And according to the data, it says that over 33 million people were affected and damage was widespread across sectors. So this slide basically shows the sectors that were hit hardest, such as agriculture, housing, and infrastructure. There are also sectors where there's a need to prioritize financial protection. And by analyzing or looking at the damage per sector, we can better target, or tools, there can be tools that can be implemented to better target disaster risk financing. For example, offering agriculture insurance or setting up emergency housing funds. And it's important to have this type of data because it helps guide future investments in both risk reduction and financial preparedness so that countries can be more prepared and implement those tools that are needed to reduce the effects that we see here. And now we look at CRI at various levels. So CDRFI instruments that will be used vary according to different levels. So at the macro level, governments have a variety of tools available to them to manage these risks. And again, these are things like sovereign risk pools, or sovereign risk insurance and other governmental tools. And this can help protect public finances and also allow government to support the communities better. Meso level, and this involves organizational groups such as cooperatives or microfinance institutions and NGOs who may purchase insurance on behalf of their members or clients. And so this fund is essentially provided to these individuals when a shock happens. It may be that individuals are not able to directly pay or pay, so there may be some type of payment plan with these aggregator partners, or they finance it based on their contributions, yearly contributions, and then it ensures that the individuals are covered. And at the micro level, which Linda and I will touch on a bit more in terms of the projects that we're implementing, this is where individuals and households are covered by insurance. And it really targets, those vulnerable groups, farmers, people working in the tourism sector, fishers, etc., to protect themselves against risks. So all three levels are important and they can work together. For example, a government will receive a large payout at the macro level, while smallholder farmers also receive direct payouts at the micro level. And again, together they create a stronger safety net for the country and allow for more resilient structures to be in place and help recovery efforts. I I think that's more or less it, or more or less the things that I would like to touch on at this stage. I do think we have a mentee after, just to get an idea of, your understanding of the information that was presented, and then we will move on to the next section.
Yes, thank you so much, Sarita, for your presentation. I would also like to quickly request the participants to turn on your camera, and we could take a screenshot of the participants who are joining. If you are open to having their pictures, please turn on your cameras. Otherwise, you can also keep your camera off. If you are not okay with your pictures being taken, maybe we can, since we have a minute or two, we can quickly take a short screenshot. I think um, is camera option disabled? It should be enabled, because okay, it says camera option disabled. Yeah, I think we can check it in a minute. Then after the Mentimeter. Okay.
I think you would have to enable it, Javi. So
Okay,
yeah,
cause
maybe while they do the mentee, you can.
yeah,
Yeah.
sounds good. So thank you everyone for participating. And I would quickly so we have our next presentation. So Mariam here will be presenting more on gender mainstreaming in CDRFI processes, and I would like to give the floor to Mariam now for her presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, can you see my
Yes,
screen?
not
Not yet.
yet.
Maybe in a
But yeah,
minute.
thank you for having me,
Yes.
and also great to see such an engaged group of community from around the world, because I also see already some questions coming in on this very specific topic on gender and social norms, and how they intersect with each other, and what we as a practitioners and implementers can do to mainstream not only gender but also social norms and all the diverse different vulnerable groups, how we can make sure that we are reaching to them who are the most vulnerable to climate change, and also the poorest in the community. So I think we can go to the next. Yeah, so this slide differs. I mean, Sarita also already mentioned exposure vulnerability, and how they, kind of how vulnerability is made of. But then I wanted to give a bit of background on why we need to pay special attention to the most vulnerable and the poorest in the communities, because more or less we're all vulnerable to climate change, and every country is vulnerable to climate change. But however, even if we are talking about small island development states, for example, which come to be the most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, even within those communities, there is a different variety of groups who are more or less more vulnerable or less vulnerable to climate change because of the social and economic conditions they have. So before I explain differential vulnerability, I wanted to give kind of some of the factors, what influences that, why poor communities, for example, and marginalized groups are most vulnerable to the climate change, and we need to pay special attention to whether we are doing policy or implementation, so to say, or analysis as well, the analytics. For example, the sector the most vulnerable and poorest communities are employed in is the agriculture sector, and I guess we all know that the agriculture sector is very highly vulnerable to climate change and changing, extreme weather events. That's one of the reason. Also, poor people also tend to live in the most vulnerable and exposed regions of the countries or in the communities. That's another factor that is influencing their vulnerability as well. Poor in comparison to the richer households, for example, who can sell their stock if extreme weather event happens, so they remain the food consumption, for example. Poor communities have to reduce their consumption, and there are studies done that they have to reduce their consumption by 70% to some point. So those are some of the examples why it is really important that we take a special look and also put special efforts into implementing programs that are taking into consideration this differentiated vulnerability. So I think with this background, so differential vulnerability refers to the idea that different groups and individuals within the population may be more or less more susceptible to negative effects of climate change. So although I will be mostly talking about on the basis of gender throughout the presentation, we at MCI and I think growing CDRFI community around the world, is there a microphone issue? Because I see a question if people can hear me, right? Yes, okay.
Yes.
Okay, good. Great. So different groups, marginalized groups, indigenous communities with youth, based on gender, disability, they're more vulnerable to climate change impact. So we need to also act accordingly. And on the next slide, I wanted to introduce you to some of the principles, guiding principles, which was developed back in 2016 as a collaboration between MCI, so which we represent today, and Insurance Global Partnership. If we can change now to the next slide, please, Ojabi. How do we make the CDRFI, so all those financial instruments and strategies, work for the most vulnerable? And the team of the practitioners, CDRFI practitioners, came up with these 7 guiding principles, which are more or less, have been guiding our program development, design, and implementation. So Sarita also mentioned the importance of conducting comprehensive need-based solutions. That means first you need to do the feasibility study. I mean, there is always talk about how we need to replicate successful programs across the regions. However, replication doesn't mean really, copying and pasting it, because that doesn't really work. We need to make sure that the programs are tailored to the local context, local needs. Client value refers to the idea that whether it's insurance product or it's catastrophe risk pool, so regional risk pool product as well, insurance products, they have to be valuable to the client, so the government, so they have to cover the hazards that are
जो ये रेगुलेशन वाला डीरेगुलेशन वाला इशू है, इसको थोड़ा सा बात कर लें। आपके पंजाब के अंदर जो चैलेंजेस हैं शुगर केन को और शुगर को बोथ को, वो कौन से हैं और क्या कोई अल्टरनेटिव सॉल्यूशंस हम डिजाइन?
Are you
Hello, sorry, I think could you post the question in chat and we will shortly address it, or you could also, since our panelists are English speakers, it would be great if you could ask the question in English. Sorry for the inconvenience in advance, and we will shortly address the issue of video as well.
आप म्यूट हैं, काइंडली इसको म्यूट।
Can you hear us?
I think.
So I'll translate the question for Mr. Ziryab. Ziryab is from Pakistan and he might not know that he is speaking Urdu, and actually the presenters are English speakers. So he actually want to know about the climate resilience and the climate resilience practices on the sugarcane production here in Pakistan. So have you any idea about that?
I think, as Jabi mentioned, we would rather go first through the presentations, if you don't mind, and then we have a specific dedicated session at the end for Q&A. So
Yes,
maybe
please.
you could
Yes.
also write in the
Yes.
chat so you don't forget the question,
Yes. Yes. On
and then we come to it
Yeah,
later.
yeah, thank you, Mariam. Just building on that, kindly please share your questions in the chat, and we have a dedicated question and answer sessions at the end. We will try to answer some of the questions during the session, and we will also collect the questions at the end and get more in depth on some of this question as well. Thank you so much. Yes, Mariam,
Okay.
sorry.
No worries. No, I actually very happy to see that there's so much interest and also the questions. So yeah, happy to respond to those after we have gone through the slides. I know it must be maybe not so to listen to the slides, but we hope to keep it very interesting and yeah, relevant for the work, because I have been also checking the chat, and there is already questions regarding gender mainstreaming. So I hope to also cover this in the next 10-15 minutes then throughout the presentation. So yeah, I mean, on the slide, I was talking about the 7 principles, guiding principles on how to reach the most vulnerable, and how we make sure that the impact of CDRFI is really working for most vulnerable communities in the most vulnerable countries as well. Affordability is definitely, when we talk about the in development sector especially, affordability is the issue, that if you want to reach the most vulnerable communities who tend to be also on a lower the income levels, we need to make sure that the products are as affordable as possible. That can be done by cutting the costs, for example, for distribution, like in terms of like what distribution channels you're using, or using digital solutions really cuts the cost as well. However, there will be also always the communities and the groups in a society which will need support from the government, from the international community, donors, which refers to as premium support. I hope some of you are familiar with that as well, or yeah, we can also discuss later on that during the Q&A session. With the premium support, you can, so if the communities cannot themselves afford the products, so climate risk insurance products, for example, that somebody, a third party, whether it be government or lately also private sector is really becoming very active on it. They offer to support by paying the full premium for those communities, which might be social welfare beneficiaries, or single moms, so to say, if we are talking about also gender, or small MSMEs. That's also, it can be done at macro level, meso level, and also on micro level. So the governments also receive premium support to purchase insurance, for example, with the risk pools. Accessibility, it needs to be accessible, and that is normally done with having effective and cost-effective distribution channels, and using the local existing networks, as opposed to setting up new ones to reach the also rural communities, and not only in central, so in the cities, for example, communities in the cities. Participation, and that is meant participation, meaningful participation. So diverse groups are meaningfully contributing to decision making as well, and how and which groups, for example, and how the design of the implementation program could be. Sustainability, I guess that is more straightforward. We need to make sure whatever we are doing as the international community and the development sector, it's sustainable, and creating enabling environment is in most cases also something that we need to work on, meaning raising awareness, capacity building of local communities, and not only communities, it might be also insurance sector, governments, decision makers, and so on and so forth. So with that, just to give you the background of importance, and I have to say the next couple of next slides as well, I will be concentrating mostly on gender, vulnerability, and social norms, but the strategies how we would be tackling these issues to make the insurance programs as inclusive as possible really applies to other groups as well. So just as a disclaimer at the beginning as well. I think we can move to the next slide. Yes, so as said, social norms and gender roles, and how we were talking about vulnerability and how some groups need more support than others. And for example, women or gender roles really is something in many societies, traditional gender roles assign men and women different responsibilities, so division of labor, and how women tend to have also triple roles with productive work, that they're also contributing to agricultural labor. The second role is reproductive work, so women are expected to manage household chores, care for children and elderly, and community and social work. So this is just one part how different roles are assigned to in different communities to based on if you're male or female, and how that kind of also contributes to your vulnerability. We covered that in the next slide. We move, please. Land ownership and control. Unfortunately, in many societies nowadays as well, land ownership and control is mostly with male. That definitely is a then disadvantage for women to be even also participating in having crop insurance, for example. Livestock agriculture inputs, again, credit and finance. Women tend to be, because of the biases as well, it might be that financial institutions do not give women credit because of absence of collaterals as well. That's a thing. And also the training and capacity building might be also limited for women groups. Next slide, please. And how then this is creating gender differentiated impacts, because from the very start you have different starting point, and if something happens, so the climate change impacts, extreme weather events happen such as droughts and flooding, decreased soil fertility, how that indirectly or directly impacts women differently than male members of the communities. That is being increased household work burden, and in many communities where we work on, that's also very crucial point, that the young girls also sometimes then have to leave the school. So that's also, of course, reducing their the education for women education is going down, lower school enrollment rates, so to say, increased hunger, because it also tends that then you reduce the consumption, loss of traditional land tenure. Those are some of the examples, and we have some more on the next slide regarding gender differentiated impacts. Increase in infectious diseases, and pregnant women, for example, are most vulnerable to those health threats as well. Then there is increased lack of healthcare services, immunization, potentially increasing maternal and infant mortality rates also increase due to this negative impacts of climate change. So I understand we will be sharing the slides, so I will not, go through all the details here. Next slide, please. Because I would also like to pay more specific attention to why is it important to be implementing gender-responsive CDRFI programs if we are implementers, but also if we are just community, why is it necessary that we kind of seek support in these terms as well. So what gender responsiveness means? Gender responsiveness means intentionally integrating gender considerations into the design, implementation, evaluation of programs and policies, including budgets. So I think in this sentence, intentionally is really important and key, because you might be unintentionally just creating more harm if you do not consider differentiated vulnerabilities based on gender, based on social norms, based on disability, based on age, and so on and so forth. Because it's not that, yeah, in some programs, we need to intentionally do that. Otherwise, it just doesn't happen automatically if we don't pay specific attention to it. So that is really a key term here, I would say. Next slide. Yeah, in terms of importance, again, importance of gender in CDRFI implementation, design, and policy as well. Of course, if we want to generally achieve the equitable society, yeah, we need to integrate gender into not all the programs, not only in CDRFI programs, but of course, we're talking about CDRFI today. So these approaches ensure that these groups have equal access to financial resources and insurance, thereby reducing gap in disaster impact recovery. Risk reduction, Sarita also covered that by recognizing differentiated roles and involving women in disaster risk reduction, playing decision making, it's possible to develop more effective strategies. And also women's knowledge and skills are also not to be neglected. They offer valuable insights, so they should have also meaningful participation in decision making to also make the link with the pro principles I was talking at the beginning. Community resilience, because women often play key roles in caring for family members, managing resources, maintaining social networks. So this is all very essential to disaster recovery after disasters, policy and institutional change. So it can lead to broader policy and institutional change, and kind of in one achieves not only the SDG goal on climate change, but also gender equality, for example, to mention the list for an argument. Next slide. This is very heavy on text, but yeah, what are the barriers? Why is that many programs that are being developed, yeah, cannot or are not able to integrate gender lens in their programming or inclusiveness, I would say. And what are the barriers? Some of the barriers are access to data, because even many data that is comprehensive data that is gathered, they're not disaggregated, for example, by gender. That of course results into not knowing what are the different needs and what are the generally the gender disparities in disaster impacts and response. So first you need to know what are the causes, then to be able to tackle them as well. So you'd agree there. This is one of the most important points. Focus on coverage. Many of CDRFI programs prioritize equal access for both genders, because I'm sure you would agree, if you're developing a climate risk insurance, which is covering against losses caused by extreme weather events, you say, I'm not excluding females to purchase the climate risk insurance, for example, but as said, this is one of the unintentional effects it will have, that if you are not paying specific attention who you are reaching to, which are the groups you're raising awareness about climate risk insurance that is available, that's that is going to increase this gap. So yeah, that is something to be aware of and be mindful of. And there might be also some very generic gender strategies that lack specifics based on the specific context and the region we are working on. So as said, again, the copy paste doesn't really work. We need to invest enough time in comprehensive assessments to see what can work and what needs to be tailored to the local context and needs. Lack of awareness, misconception, general lack of insufficient awareness. There is insufficient awareness about CDRFI products, so to say, in many regions of the world, but also about awareness about gender responsiveness, which then, of course, they do not really do any good to, again, to gender awareness, and like that the programs become more gender responsive. Limited gender certificate capacity, yes. It might be that teams, government institutions, local communities, or like official, formal or informal groups, they do not have simply the enough gender expertise to conduct the gender analysis, for example, and without trained personnel, organizations struggle to design, implement, and monitor gender responsive implementation. Next, please. Yes. So what we are interested in most is how do we actually do it? And I saw also there was a question in a chat regarding this as well. What are the practical tools and strategies to mainstream gender in CDRFI, gender inclusion? It starts with the policy and strategy development that are clear and recognize the importance, most of all, for mainstreaming gender in CDRFI, which then should also align with the national and international gender equality commitments, collecting disaggregated data and data collection and analysis. As I mentioned before, if you do not know what are the disparities and differential vulnerabilities, then yeah, you cannot really do anything about it. So that's important that the data we are collecting is gender disaggregated to see the differences, and then design and implement programs accordingly that engage in women and marginalized groups. Active involvement, meaning it's good to have, for example, 50-50 participation or all the groups attending, for example, capacity building or focus group discussion. However, it has to be meaningful as well. So we need to take into account what they're saying. It's just not about being there in a room, but also that their opinions and ideas and knowledge is being taken up to then be implemented. I have to also mention in terms of barrier is not so much barrier, but like in CDRFI programming, it's also a very recent phenomenon, I would say, over the last 3-4 years, that donors are also asking specifically that programs are gender responsive. So this is kind of a precondition for the funding. If you're implementing a donor-funded project, you would probably also have encountered similar cases when they also give budget, but they also ask that it's mandatory that you do a gender analysis before you start any kind of activity in any specific country. Next slide. Yeah, capacity building. As said, capacity building is needed for all the groups on CDRFI especially, but also capacity building on gender mainstreaming and involving all the diverse groups, vulnerable groups of the community. Training should enhance understanding of gender dynamics, stereotypes and biases that are enabling that would enable us to be implementing gender sensitive, gender responsive programs. Communication and outreach is also important if you're developing communication material on any of the insurance product, for example, climate risk insurance product you're about to launch. Is this also appealing to, not only male or not only specific religious groups, but like, is it applicable for everyone? I think that's important. Even if you're doing an outreach session or training and so on and so forth, we found that it's even important to acknowledge the timing and think about the like when this should take place, because if you are going to set a training, let's say for midday in the afternoon, when the kids come home and then females normally have to cook, for example, then there will be less participation from them as well. And then I have to say, from our experience, that has been also the case. So that's why all these considerations are important to be made. Tailored financial services, as well. Tailoring. So that's why we need to know about the needs and the vulnerabilities to tailor then financial services to the needs of the different communities. Next slide, and I think this is then last slide for me. Monitoring and evaluation with the gender lens. So like normally you need to monitor your impacts and if you're achieving the goals that were set before project start, and you need to be monitoring not only general impact, but also are you achieving gender responsiveness in your implementation. Budget, as I mentioned, is really important point because it is very costly to do the gender analysis. It's very costly at the beginning to understand what are the needs and the vulnerabilities of different groups based on gender. So if I'm not sure exactly which sectors participants are really represented today, but at least for it is relevant for policymakers, but also for a development community that we budget enough resources at the very beginning to be able to implement gender responsive programming or gender responsive programs, CDRFI programs, and collaboration partnership. That underlines the importance of collaborating with local groups that are working on similar topics. It might be not only, as said, I'm not only talking about like gender or feminist groups, but or women's rights groups, but also with groups that are working on disability issues, elderly engagement issues, and so on and so forth, to have full picture and also network to support you throughout the implementation. That must be it from my side. Yes, I see again the questions in the chat. I will try to respond as well to them.
Yes.
But then, I hope we'll have enough time at the end as well.
Yes, thank you, Mariam, for your presentations. And now I can see the videos, cameras, pictures from our participant as well. So if you would like to turn on your camera, that would also be great, so that we can know our participants a bit more, and maybe we can take a small screenshot as well. In a moment, I can see that there is no video option in Zoom desktop app, no camera option. Okay, then I would check again shortly. But I also see a lot of question and answers, questions and discussions in the chat. Shortly, I would also like to inform that today is mostly the introductory session. So we have just touch base on the foundation of CDRFI and what are the different gender aspects, what are the different projects that has been carried out globally, but we have upcoming 2 webinars in future and next month and the month after that, where we look more into different cases and also what are the different options available in terms of disaster risk financing in Pakistan. But for today, I could see like a question where you have asked about specific questions related to Pakistan. We would look more into those as well in coming sessions. We can maybe go through a short Mentimeter again if we have time, or maybe just shortly, or I think we are a bit short on time, so maybe we can go through our third presentation and then we can come back again. So I would give the floor to Linda and Sarita for their presentation.
Yes. We cannot see your screen yet.
Yes, now.
Perfect. So hello to all. I'm very happy to be with you today to further discuss about CDRFI and insurance. And so since now you have a better idea and overview of CDRFI in general, we're going to zoom in on a specific instrument, which is parametric climate risk insurance. Next slide, please. Yes, you can go to the next slide.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, perfect. So I'm sure you're all familiar with indemnity insurance, which is the most common, most known type of insurance. And so with indemnity insurance, the particularity is that the loss or damage to an asset needs to be verified. So that means that a claim adjuster may need to come to a specific place to examine the extent of the damage, and then payouts depend on this claim assessment process. And as you can see on this slide, parametric insurance functions a little bit differently. So parametric insurance is a type of insurance in which a payout is automatically triggered when a certain predefined parameter is met or exceeded. And this parameter can be the duration of a dry period, the amount of precipitation, or, for example, wind speed. And so this type of insurance, which is also referred to as weather index insurance, relies on satellite data. So triggers are monitored through satellite data, and there is no claim assessment process in comparison with indemnity insurance. So parametric insurance has a lot of advantages. For example, it is cheaper than indemnity insurance. It allows to reach remote areas more easily, and it is also it enables quick payouts. Sorry. So these are the main advantages, but it also has some downfalls. And the biggest disadvantage is basis risk. And we can move to the next slide. Yes, so basis risk refers to the challenges that arise when actual losses do not match with the estimated losses of a policyholder. So there are two types of situation under this term of basis risk. The first situation is when the payout is triggered even though the policyholder did not have any damages. So basically in this situation, the trigger is met, and so automatically the policyholder received the payout even though they did not incur any damages. And in the second situations, payouts are not triggered even though the policyholder did have some damages. So as you can see, the question is the trigger met, yes or no? And if it's met, the payout is automatically sent, usually through mobile money. Next, please. And so now that you know what parametric insurance is, we can take a closer look at the link between climate risk insurance and the resilience of individuals and communities. So the question is, how can climate risk insurance help increase financial preparedness and resilience of individuals in the context of climate-induced disasters? And so to answer this question, we can take a closer look at the 3 A's of resilience. So this is a way to explain what we mean by resilience. So the first A is anticipate. And by anticipate, we mean the ability to estimate the impact of weather events on individuals and countries and response measures and costs required to adequately address the impacts. So that is the first A. The second A is absorb, which is the ability to cope with the impacts of an extreme weather event and absorb the effect of the event. And the third is adapt, which is the ability to adjust to actual or expected extreme weather events and their effects. And adaptation seeks to moderate or avoid harm or exploit beneficial opportunities. So now that we know what we mean by resilience, you can see on this slide the link between resilience and climate risk insurance. So first, we see that climate risk insurance can help anticipate, because having insurance makes a person more prone to think about risks and to assess risk in order to minimize the damages and therefore increase the benefit of the payout. So that is one aspect. Climate risk insurance can also help absorb because it provides timely financing. And so thanks to this, it allows policyholders to avoid resorting to negative coping mechanisms, such as the sale of assets. And so it fosters a quicker recovery. And we can also see that climate risk insurance improves creditworthiness of individuals and helps increase investments in higher return activities. And so, just in general, we can see that climate risk insurance transforms risk management because it fosters a risk reduction behavior. Next slide, please. So we've seen the definition of parametric insurance. We've seen how it relates to resilience. And now I'm going to explain the different steps that are required to design and implement a parametric insurance products. And we start with step 1, which is scoping and market research. And so the aim is to understand the needs on the ground, the needs of people, and also understand what is already in the market. And to do so, one must conduct interviews and collect survey data to have access to this precious feedback from the ground. And so at this stage, we seek to understand how are people currently coping with climate risks? Do they already have access to certain financial products? Do they receive support from NGOs or the government? Do they rely on remittances, etc.? And so the aim is to understand the kind of products that would be needed to increase resilience. And then step 2. Yes, step 2 is product development and pricing. And so the modelers are really at the heart of this step, because it is the step where we design the insurance product. So the modeler needs to take a look at historical data to understand how often extreme weather events have happened in the past and the kind of damages they caused. And then, based on this analysis, the modeler sets the triggers and designs the product in general. And so with climate change, this step is getting trickier because weather patterns are a bit more unpredictable, but nevertheless, modelers rely on historical data and they try to envision different scenarios in the future. And also, it's important to note that insurance products can be refined year after year so that they become increasingly efficient. And so it's important to strike a balance between the needs of clients, meaning that it's important that the triggers are set in a way that allows clients to receive payouts, but also it needs to take into consideration the needs of the insurer. So the product needs to be financially viable, otherwise the insurer would likely pull out. And step 2 concludes with the regulatory approval, meaning the green light from the regulator to the insurer, that is the official authorization to commercialize the insurance product. We can move to the next step. So the next step, step 3, is marketing and awareness raising. So now we've done the market research, we know what people need, we've developed the product with the modeler, we've had the regulatory approval, and now the aim is to bring the product to the market and to communicate on it. So that means conducting awareness-raising activities and designing an efficient outreach strategy. So we need to define how to implement this outreach, who should be targeted, how to make sure that these outreach activities are inclusive, that they include both men and women, also other marginalized groups, and in which language they should be conducted, etc. So this is a very key step. And then we move to step 4, which is enrollment, renewals, and premium collection. So that is the step where premiums are collected, and those who already have purchased the climate risk insurance product can renew it. So we can move to the next step. Yes, that is step 4. And then next step, please. Step 5. So whether in the case where the country is hit by an extreme weather event, such as a cyclone or heavy rains, that would be the step where insurers would send the payouts to policyholders. And again, this doesn't require any claim assessment process. And the final step, step 6, is the monitoring and evaluation. Next slide, please. Yes, so it's important to note that it's not just a final step. It's an ongoing process that should occur at each step. It's important to maintain a constant feedback loop to make sure that the product that is being created actually addresses the needs expressed by people. Next step, please. Next slide. Perfect. Now that you have an idea of the different steps that are required to design and implement an insurance product, I will briefly explain what we do with our team at UNUEHS. So we are involved in a project called the Pacific Insurance and Climate Adaptation Program, PCAP. So before the start of PCAP in 2021, there were local insurers in the Pacific, but there were no climate risk insurance products. And so in 2021, the United Nations Capital Development Fund, UNCDF, the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, and our agency, UNUEHS, partnered to create PCAP. And so the aim of PCAP is to strengthen communities' financial preparedness and resilience through the development and scale-up of the first micro-level parametric insurance products in the Pacific. So we started in Fiji, and now we're implementing the program in 7 countries across the Pacific. And products are offered at the micro level, so they are sold to individuals, but also at the meso level through demand aggregators such as agricultural cooperatives. Next slide, please. So here you have a bit more information on the product, the first product that was introduced in Fiji, which was a high wind speed cover. Now the product has evolved. It's a product against high wind speed and excess rainfall. But the main features of the product are similar. So the premium is of 100 Fijian dollars, meaning approximately 45 USD, and the maximum sum insured is of 1,000 Fijian dollars, so approximately 440 USD. and the policy lasts a year. As you can see on the table, payouts depend mainly on two factors. The first one is the wind speed or level of rainfall recorded at a given place, and the second is the distance to the eye of the cyclone. And multiple events are covered within a policy year up until 100% of the sum insured. So a policyholder would get 1,000 Fijian dollars a year maximum. It's also important to highlight that within the framework of PCAP, we've created an innovative anticipatory insurance product. So that is a meso-level product, a product that is sold to cooperatives that enables policyholders to receive up to 20% of the payout in advance, so 24 hours before the cyclone landfall. And this product exists, but it hasn't been triggered yet. So the idea is that the cooperative would receive this anticipatory payout and use it to purchase goods for their members, and so they would redistribute these goods to their members so that they can better face this extreme weather event. Next slide, please. On this slide, you can see the different partners we work with to implement PCAP. So at the center, you see the three implementing agencies. So UNCDF, which is the lead agency, UNDP, which is in charge of administrative matters, and UNUEHS, and we are in charge of research and impact assessment. And so as I was telling you, we work with a risk modeler, WRMS, and the role of the risk modeler is to design the insurance products, so to set the triggers, the premiums, the maximum sum insured, and the different tiers of payouts. We also work with local insurance companies, and their role is to sell the insurance product and provide payouts in case of a heavy rain or excess wind in Fiji. We work as well with the reinsurance. Oh, I think it disappeared.
Okay. Can you see the screen?
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem. So we also work with the reinsurance companies, CORE, which provide the reinsurance capacity to local insurers. We work with digital solutions partners, so an insurtech called IT Galax, which provides the onboarding solution, and also mobile money services such as Digicel and Vodafone. We work with cooperatives, and these are very important partners because, as I said, we rely on them for outreach, and they are also policyholders themselves, so cooperative can purchase insurance. And we work with various UN agencies. For example, we worked with UN Women to make sure that the project is inclusive and takes into consideration the needs of women, especially for outreach. And finally, we also interact with government partners, such as, for example, the Fijian Ministry of Agriculture and Waterways. I'll just say a word on this partnership right after, and with the regulators, of course. And we also rely on funding from our donors, which are the governments of India, New Zealand, Australia, and Luxembourg, as well as the UK. United Kingdom. And to conclude this part, next slide, please. Yes, so just to give you an idea more concretely of the impact of these payouts. So we have conducted a study in partnership with the Fijian Ministry of Agriculture and Waterways to assess the impact of payouts on policyholders' resilience. And to do so, we have interviewed two groups of people. The first group is constituted of 480 policyholders, so people who receive 1 to 3 payouts, and also another group, which is, so the first group is called the treatment group, and the second is called the control group, and it's constituted of 120 individuals who had similar socioeconomic characteristics and were from the same communities and did not receive payouts because they were uninsured. And so the analysis is still ongoing, but we can already identify a couple of key recommendations or key insights. For example, we know that payouts were used mainly to mitigate the first stress. They were used to purchase food and water, to make repairs to damaged properties, and also to buy farm input. We also see that policyholders value this product. More than 60% of them indicated that payouts significantly or somewhat alleviated anxieties and uncertainties related to climate hazards. And finally, thanks to this data collection, we were able to identify recommendations from policyholders. For example, they asked for an extension of the coverage to additional hazards beyond rain and wind. And they also asked for an increase of the sum insured. And they highlighted the importance of improving access to information, awareness raising, and support. So that is it for the Pacific program. I will now let Sarita present CREC, the Caribbean program.
Thank you so much, Linda. Since we have 10 minutes for the webinar, we can maybe take some of the questions from the chat as well, so that I see a lot of participants can now turn on their camera, so we can interact with participants for next 10 minutes, take some of the questions from them before, and if time allows, we can get into Sarita's presentation, but maybe we can look into some of the questions. I see some questions that have been posted by participants. Maybe Mariam, if you would like to, I see a lot of questions has been directed towards you as well. If you look into the Q&A section, there are also some answers that has been questions that have been answered. While if you would like to answer some of the answers to the participants, if someone can raise their hand and then also ask their question to one of the panelists.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the questions in the Q&A and I already responded to them. I mean, because of the time, happy to kind of repeat in more elaborate way, but maybe we should also let others,
Yes.
if there's any other questions, then yeah, happy to jump in, but yeah.
Yes, if somebody has question, you can raise your hand. I cannot see any hands raised. So maybe I can take one of the questions that's from Busra Asmat, if she is still in the meeting at the moment. I could see, I could not, yes. Okay, maybe then I would take another question, which has also been posted by Ali Tariq Pervez. We have a question related with if there is any disaster preparedness or response plan linked to insurance, such as payout, social protection triggers that should integrate WASH, which includes water, sanitation, and hygiene support with a gender lens. I'm not so sure if the question was addressed already.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, I responded in the Q&A as well, but I think that is a very good example of one of the ways how gender considerations can be implemented in the programming that the colleague brought in the Q&A. Definitely, I absolutely agree. But also when we're talking about, it's not only There was also another question regarding how SDGs are covering more or less gender integration into CDRFI. And I also responded that it's not specific to CDRFI, right? In SDGs, we have one goal that is for gender equality, and then other one, I mean, there are 16, but in terms of climate change, it doesn't matter if you're implementing climate change relating program or capacity building on financial inclusion. I think this inclusiveness and thinking about needs and vulnerabilities of different groups, because the colleagues also brought, for example, disability. Yeah, that is very important. And in more innovative ways we come up with as implementers to integrate, and WASH was one of the examples. So yeah, thank you for this aspect to the colleague, and also, yeah, as said, very good example.
Yes, we have Sumaya Sajid who have raised her hand. Yes, please feel free to turn on your, yeah, you're on mute already.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Sumaya Sajad. I'm working in the humanitarian development sector for past 20 years. And I have, first of all, thank you so much for such a wonderful insights and wonderful presentations, because that covers really important aspects, which are indeed really important when we are talking about Pakistan in specific. One of the key observations which I have seen in the sector, that quite a lot of work is done on disaster risk reduction and climate resilience. But somehow, like one of the people who actually asked the question related to the disaster preparedness plans, the disaster preparedness roadmaps, the climate resilience efforts, but somehow the climate insurance part is, although there is a lot of discussions around it, but that is somehow little missing when we are talking about Pakistan. I do understand there are really, really successful examples across Asia, but then those are not as such translated into the government documents. So I would just like to ask your insights, because the network is also working on the insurance part of it, and that is indeed really, really important. And the way Linda explains, I am really excited to see those sort of initiated in Pakistan as well. But then can you just shed some light on it, that if that is reflected, or if what sort of efforts can be are required to implement it?
Yes, thank you so much for your question. Would any of our panelists like to address the question shortly? Yeah, I would put maybe Sarita on spot, and if you could answer our guest, our participant shortly.
Sure.
Yes.
Hi, Sumaya. Thanks for the
To
question.
allow me, I can answer the question in context of Pakistan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello. Thank you so much having us and organizing this insightful discussion. I'm working in SAR project, the project who is supporting this webinar discussion as a technical advisor. So under this CDRFI thematic area, we have piloted some projects in our intervention in our partner districts and in partner provinces. So there are some initiatives, like you mentioned, like what was your experience in Pakistan? Through these pilot projects, we engaged women's and the small holder farmers on this climate smart agriculture practices, this village model bank concept, the microfinancing, the agriculture insurance, industry-based agriculture insurance. So there are, lesson learned, and I would suggest, like, in coming webinar, we can invite our partners to present their projects highlights, their experiences. So regarding, you asked about this insurance products. Yes, we started with a very ambitious target, but when it comes to implementation, there were some challenges in terms of, like, there were some projects, like I can quote the example of rural aid projects. they identified around 400 farmers, but they did not receive this financial loan just because of this interest. That was the interest loan. So Islamic perspective doesn't allow this, interest. So in that aspects, there were some, dropouts in engaging the microfinancing. Same, this agriculture insurance, how this will, meet the criteria to reach to this agriculture insurance program. So there are some, lesson learned in upcoming webinar. We can present you the detailed learnings if you're interested. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, Khadija, Banu, for jumping in and sharing your insights from different activities that has been going on in Pakistan. Yeah, we have one hand raised from Ms. Ifra Shokat. You can turn on your camera if it's possible. I think there is access for most of the participants, but somehow I think not for all. It's been updated.
Oh no,
Okay, I can
it seems they also
maybe we
turned,
can
yeah.
I think like you are able to talk.
Hello. Good. Yeah. Thank you very much for your presentations. My name is Ifra, and I am right now working in the development cooperation in Germany, but due to this topic, it seemed like quite interesting for me. So, yeah, I wanted to ask a few questions during the presentation when you guys were presenting, because at that time I had questions regarding some of the slides, but right now they have skipped through my mind. But in general, I would like to ask what are the possible could be structural or policy reforms um, are possible to scale up the insurance, climate insurance, especially in Pakistan, because now in the face of the recent flood and stuff like this, I think it's really important, this topic, and to work on this. So yeah, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Ifra, for your question. So, as I mentioned already, today we are more on touching base on what are the different instruments that's available and what are the different options. Yeah, I know I can see your video as well. But overall, from our experiences, I think Linda also covered most of the topic already in how it's been done in other countries. So maybe it's more about some kind of lessons that we could take from other countries and how it's being done in other countries, and what is lacking more in from Pakistan's perspective to integrate.
So if I'm not wrong, I'm sorry, I joined a little bit late this session. So in Pakistan right now, this project is in the earliest stage, or it's only about making awareness, or what is this about? Or is it possible that I have these slides from today?
Yes, we will also share the PowerPoint presentations with you as well after our webinar. And we also have more sessions coming up where we look more into Pakistan specific context, or more in depth about what is different instruments that's being used in Pakistan, or what is not being used. As for the project, I could shortly it's our project is more on the vulnerability assessment in Pakistan, and as a part of our project, what we are also trying to do is integrate and bring experts and researchers into this platform where they share more about their projects, their works. We have some trainings, we have some webinar series where we look more into how things are being done in other countries as well, and how this can be used in Pakistan specific case, some lesson learned, some gaps finding, and so on. I think Mariam just raised her hand. Or
Yes.
was I mistaken? Yes, Mariam.
No, I mean, I wanted to quickly jump in terms of like how it can be scaled, right? That was Ifra's question, and how in the context of Pakistan. Unfortunately, we haven't had opportunity to work. I mean, we are implementing CDRFI programs at the moment in the Caribbean countries and in the Pacific countries. But we are, looking into South Asia and like to expand our work to other regions as well. But what I can say is, in addition to what Sarita mentioned at the beginning, integrating CDRFI into national adaptation plans, so that would be something at the policy level that needs to be done. I think governments can definitely take a really leading role also in implementation as well. I'm not sure how many of you are also aware with the Global Shield against climate risk, which is the GIZ's. It's an initiative, G7 initiative. I understand, although we are not working with Global Shield directly as a team, but I know that Pakistan is one of the pathfinder countries, and being a pathfinder country means that Global Shield is supporting Pakistani government to implement to do the gap assessment, what is needed to be done in terms of CDRFI in the country, regulatory basis, so the policy, also implementation, and what are some of the missing enabling environment, so to say, the kind of conditions for creating enabling environment to implement CDRFI solutions. So I think at this front, that is what is happening in that sense. But also like how to scale, I think we have a very good example of linking climate risk insurance with social protection schemes within countries. And many of you also at the beginning during the Menti question mentioned that as well, right? Because social protection systems are centralized by the government, and they have most kind of information on who those communities are. And in Fiji, from the example also what Linda mentioned, it's very common that governments take up climate risk insurance or like provide premium support for climate risk insurance and link it with their social protection systems. So they provide climate risk insurance for the social welfare beneficiaries. So that is one of the ways. But generally, I think again, to go back to Global Shield and the processes that are ongoing at the moment, it's at very beginning. But yeah, I hope to also curious to see how that develops.
Yeah,
over
thank
the
you very
next
much.
years.
No, for me, I just wanted to understand the overview, because right now what I understand is that this project is being majorly implemented in the Pacific. So
I mean, yeah, what we like our team is involved majorly in Pacific, but it doesn't mean that other organizations are not doing anything.
no,
Somewhere
of
else,
course,
right? Yeah,
of course.
of course, I cannot provide any details on other implementation programs, but that was kind of overview what I had in terms of what is happening at macro level, and in terms of the collaboration with Pakistani government and Global Shield Secretariat.
Yeah. Thank you, Mariam. I think it was a very we had like a long, very deep contents for today's introductory session. I would again like to highlight that we are just touching base on CDRFI and different financing strategies that's being that is there in today's session, and we will look more in depth and more case studies, how different civil societies can participate and how different organizations can look more into different CDRFI strategies in our upcoming webinars. I have also posted the link for the survey if you have specific needs. For instance, I think today it was like a lot of interest on how things are being done in Pakistan and how what are the gaps, what are the requirements, and this kind of things can also be looked into more in upcoming webinars as well. And since we are a bit out of time, since like 2 hours is not enough for such a big content, and I'm very thankful for all the participants who were very patient throughout some technical difficulties and who were very actively engaged in the chat as well, and there were like some posts and post in the Q&A section as well. Maybe we can, I am not so sure if everybody can turn on their camera. I could see some of you can, even though I gave permission to all. Maybe it's taking a while to have it updated, but whoever can turn on their camera, if you would quickly turn on, and I can take, with your permission, a screenshot that we might use for visibilities in our social media or for reporting and so on. That would be great. So I would take just like a short screenshot quickly. Yes, so I have one more. So yes, I cannot see all the participants at the moment, but yeah, so thank you so much for being with us in this session, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all in our next sessions as well. I hope everybody is staying connected in the Pakistan Climate Resilience Network in the LinkedIn page. You can also find it if you just type in Pak-CRN, or I can also put the name in chat quickly. And we will share the presentation with you shortly after the webinar, after the session. And thank you so much everybody for attending, and I'm looking forward for your participation in our upcoming webinars as well. And feel free to have discussion in the LinkedIn page. And thank you so much. I wish you a very good rest of the day.
Okay, take care. Thank you so much. It was a really insightful session, and I'm really happy to learn about the CDRFI. And one of the questions that I have, that how we would ensure to optimize the financial instruments and the efficient dispersal of all mechanisms and essential for financial resources that reaches those who need the most. How we can prioritize them? Can you please shed some light on it?
Unfortunately, we are a bit out of time, but I have noted your question, and maybe after the session we can send you an email to everybody on what we talked about, or something similar, and we can also look into your questions more in depth in our upcoming sessions, if that is okay with you. But I have noted your question already.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'll be waiting. And
Okay,
it was
thank you so
really
much.
insightful.
Thank you so
It was
much.
a pleasure to hear from you guys. Thanks a lot.
Thank
Okay,
you.
have a good rest of the day. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.